All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody who came today. Appreciate you joining us. My name is David Davis. I am the Vice President of Programs for the Kentucky Association of Government Communicators. And we are fortunate today. Let me move my mouse. To be joined by some nice folks from Liberty Hall Historic Site in Frankfort. Couple of announcements before I get started. Our next Lunch and Learn is going to be November 17th at 10:30. Details will be coming out about that soon. I hope that I see our president, Charlie Baglin, just joined us. I'm going to give him a minute to get set and see if he has anything to say. During the presentation today, I will be manning the chat. So if you have any questions for our speakers, please send them through there or hold them until the end, and then we can unmute and we can go ahead and ask our questions. Charlie, did you have anything to say before I introduce our speakers?
So there, can you hear me, David?
I can hear you, sir.
Yeah, my apologies for being late. I rushed off my wife to get the scripture, but everything okay. Looking forward to today's lunch and learn. And at the very end, I want to put out a plea for people to nominate their friends and co-members to become a part of this. On our board next year, maybe fill in some gaps. So at the very end, I'll have a little thing to say about that. So please stay with us through the meeting and don't rush off back to work as soon as you're done. We should all chat a little bit with the members.
All right. That good, Charlie?
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, so today's speakers, we have some great folks from Liberty Hall Historic Site in Frankfort. We have Sarah Elliott, the Executive Director. Sarah is a longtime museum professional. Sarah's worked with Kentucky State Parks, the Kentucky Historical Society, and is now on her second tour of duty with Liberty Hall Historic Site. She has a BA in American History from the University of Kentucky and an MA in Folk Studies from Western Kentucky University. We also have Jerica Zuniga. I hope I'm saying that right, Jerica. Jerica has been artistic her whole life. She finds love in digital art that has led her to the path of content creation and marketing. She has 8 years of experience with a variety of companies and has enjoyed every moment of her career. And then last but not least, we have Julia Gabbard, who is a tour guide at the site. And Julia grew up in Frankfort. She attended college at the University of Kentucky. She has a background in retail management and has been working as a housekeeper and a tour guide with Liberty Hall Historic for about 5 years now. So Sarah Elliott is the Executive Director is going to get us started. And as I said, hold your questions till the end, send them to me in the chat, and enjoy it. So I'm going to make Jerica you the host, and Sarah, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm so sorry we can't be together in person like we had planned to in July, I think it was. But we're glad to see everybody today. And what I wanted to tell you first is that I'm going to send David an email that will have a pass for 2 people to come do a tour for free. That way you guys can come whenever you want, and so you can come and see the site. We'd really like for you to do that. In the email, I'm also going to send a link to a survey that we've sent out to our membership or our supporters, asking what we could do to make your visit to Liberty Hall more enjoyable. There is a question about COVID, you know, what could we do? Social distancing, masks, that sort of thing. But we'd also like to get your input on programs or the media for the, or the platform for the program. So if you all wouldn't mind filling out that survey, we'd love it. But for those of you who don't know, Liberty Hall Historic Site is owned by the National Society of the Colonial Dames of America in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, NSCDA. The property originally belonged to John Brown, who was one of Kentucky's first U.S. senators. He and his wife, Margaretta, moved down to Frankfort around 1800 and started a dynasty, if you want to say that. The family lived at Liberty Hall and the Orlando Brown House until the mid-20th century. And so we have, which means not only do we have a great physical collection, but we also have a great archival collection. Lots of letters, diaries, photographs, things that give us the ammunition we need to create our programming that we do. We talk about the Brown family, John and Margaretta, their two sons, Mason and Orlando. Mason inherited Liberty Hall, and John Brown had the Brown House built for Orlando. He was trying to be fair in the division of the property when he died. But we also talk about a family called the Stepneys. It's Hannah and Miles Stepney. They were the enslaved African Americans who worked and lived at Liberty Hall. These are the pretty much the only enslaved people that we have a lot of information about. So that is a fun part of, well, I won't say fun, but it's a new, interesting aspect of our tour. But if you want to learn more about them prior to coming to visit, we do have a series of blogs about the Stepney family. The blogs also cover a lot of things like decorative arts, travel by the Brown family, and a variety of things. So if you want to go to our website, there we have blogs, we have a hands-on history section where we have activities, we have coloring pages and puzzles that are based on artwork in the collection. And if you are interested in getting notification about future programming, you can go on the website and sign up to get our e-newsletter. We don't send it out, we send it out once a month, and we do send out notices when we have a program, but we promise we won't inundate you with emails. That's really all I wanted to say, just to say thank you for coming today, and hopefully you all will come and see us in person at some point. But Jerica and Julia have the main things that we want to talk about, so I'm going to turn it over to Jerica.
Thank you. I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint really quick so that way I can go through this with you all. It's loading. Okay. All right, so today I'm going to give you a glimpse into how I market the museum by showing you a few types of the digital strategies and tactics that we're currently using. Here I have today's overview. We're going to look at some US statistics for 2020, talk about how we're using digital platforms and how we're measuring the success of our efforts on those platforms. This slide, I'm not going to stay on too long, but I wanted to show it to you all kind of just to give you an idea of how many users there are on each platform. And just a fun little fact, Kentucky is the #1 most connected state on social media. Okay. One of our main goals at the museum is to get a good amount of exposure as cost efficiently as possible because we have a limited budget. In terms of getting free exposure, nothing in my opinion can beat digital. So I've put a lot of effort into building our digital presence and just really taking it to a new level. This list includes most of the ways that we're building that presence. Some we were already doing, some we were not, but all of them we've increased the amount that we're using them and put a strategy in place of how and why we're using them. So going down the list, content creation is what it sounds like. Most of these topics could fall under content creation. I've just kind of included it by itself because we have been putting out a lot more this year as compared to prior years. We use both paid and unpaid digital ads. Most of the time our organic or unpaid ads, we get an average of 500 to 600 people that see those posts. And then this image on the left here is an example of a paid ad we did for our virtual auction, where we spent $75 for a 10-day run and we reached 24,000 people. So it was well worth it in my opinion. Email marketing, we send out an average of 4 emails a month. Sarah covered this slightly. They include information about what we have been doing or what we will be doing. So events, blogs, activities, items that have been found in the collection, things like that. Search engine optimization, basically just taking measures to improve traffic to our website. And then social media marketing, unique offers and rentals is what I'm going to be covering mostly in this presentation, just because that tends to be what most people are interested in learning about, but I think all of these are equally important to us. So almost everything I do could be summed up to social media management. Social media management and social media marketing are kind of one and the same. You need to manage your social media correctly so that you can market it correctly. I create monthly marketing calendars and audits or analytics to make sure that we have daily content to put out, a way to monitor what's working and what's not working, and also to just kind of stay up to date with what is going to be trending or what might be trending that we can relate to. The strategies and tactics are based off of our goals at the museum. So like I said, one of our main ones is getting more exposure as cost efficiently as possible. And this means ensuring that we get the best organic or unpaid reach by choosing which platforms we're using and following guidelines on each of those platforms, kind of similar to SEO. It involves planning out our text to make our point short, sweet, and simple, doing research on which hashtags are going to give us the greatest viewing of a post, and showing our audience appreciation by liking and responding to their comments and messages, and showing that we ourselves are active on the platforms by engaging with other pages. A main strategy is figuring out the times that our audience is most active. So for us, it tends to be kind of in a block of 2 to 4 p.m. And what we're posting and why we're posting that. So I have an example here of a post that we did a couple months ago. Jupiter and Saturn were going to be reaching opposition that week, and I knew it was going to be trending, so I found a way to relate that to the museum by using a picture of a telescope that we had on display in the museum. And the hashtags I chose just kind of based off of what I thought might be searched that week. It's kind of a trial and error thing, which I'll cover later in the presentation on that. The next thing I do is competitor research. So I see what's working and what's not working for other local museums and venues. And then I also research other businesses that are similar to us or in the same field, but not necessarily our competitor because they're so far. So for example, I really love to research what the Met puts out on its platforms because I think they do it very well. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, they're all almost 100% visual, and Facebook is on its way there. So I'm constantly taking pictures, editing, designing, and more recently filming and editing videos because we've started a YouTube channel. So photography, videography, editing, and design, I think are all very important to making sure that our page is standing out. The last major thing I do is track our statistics, and I'm going to cover that later in the presentation as well. So now I'm going to give you a couple examples of different strategies and tactics that we have in place to help our organic reach. First, we have cross promotions, and this is very similar to piggybacking, but I like to think of these more like handshakes with other companies. So I'll plan out a post, and with prior approval from the other business, I'll tag them in it on our media sites. This opens us up to being seen by their followers and also kind of shows their followers that they're associated with a business that they already trust. Image 1 is from National Ice Cream Day. I encouraged our followers to take a walk in our gardens and then go down the street and pull off with some ice cream from Hoggies. And looking at the graph, you can see that this gave us the potential to reach 7,000 of their Facebook followers and 3,000 of their Instagram followers. And I've also included Blessed Bee Photography in my old Kentucky On Yoga Center's numbers for reference. Image 2 is a wedding. Anytime that we have a wedding, that gives us the opportunity to not only promote the photographer to our potential renters, but it also lets the photographer's clients kind of see our venue and possibly choose us to have as their rental space. And then image 3 is a yoga class rental, and this is the same kind of concept. Anytime that a business rents from us, we're able to promote their company while they're promoting ours. Next, we have consumer engagement, and these are the types of posts that should put you on a personal level with your customer and get them to engage with you. So every platform rewards you by giving you more organic growth based on how much engagement your post is getting. I have 3 examples here of that. The first one is our featured of the week post. And this is where I just encourage our followers to come to the site, take photos or videos and tag us in them. And then if they do that, I will post their picture or video to our page. A lot of visitors tend to like these because we're showing them the appreciation that they want. And it's also a really great way to help our organic growth because the page is getting tagged. The middle post is an example of engaging the audience by asking them a question in hopes that they're going to respond in the comments. And generally we get a good amount of responses to these as well. And then post 3 shows our audience being physically present at the site. I think it's especially important for us to show pictures of our events so that customers can make decisions on attending our future ones based off of these images and kind of getting an idea of what they can expect from us. An additional way we've been increasing our digital presence is by offering unique material on our customers. And Sarah kind of covered this a little bit also, but this year on our main website, we put out a bi-weekly blog and a hands-on history page. And as she said, the blog kind of covers topics from the enslaved family that lived at Liberty Hall, collection pieces, and Brown family history. And then the hands-on history page has a bunch of different types of activities. There's coloring sheets, games, pumpkin stencils, lots of different cool things that we have on there. And then a very recent offer of ours is making our museum store available online. It opens us up to potential customers who may want to visit, but they can't due to the distance. And it also allows our customers who can visit to be able to purchase something from the gift shop because we do have it closed right now due to the pandemic. And in the picture here, I have a few of our products that are in the store, as well as 2 pumpkins that were carved using the stencils from the hands-on history page. Rentals can be included in any of the categories I've already covered, kind of making them a huge opportunity for us. Most museums earn income from their programs and events, not their ticket sales. So the fact that we're able to make income an additional way is really beneficial. They also create additional platforms for us to advertise on, such as Wedding Wire and Eventective. I've put a lot of focus into making the site more relevant in terms of a rental, and that kind of includes updating our information on different media sites, what we can offer, putting up recent pictures, video advertisements, really just kind of revamping what we have in place. I've also recently updated our grounds map, which is pictured here. Prior to this, it was a sketched map, and I felt it didn't give our potential renters a true idea of what the grounds looked like. And then a deal we began running this year because of the pandemic is $500 specials to our renters since they're not allowed to have more than 50 guests. The 2 pictures on the right are 2 different renters who took advantage of this deal. The top one is a wedding party, and the bottom is Kentucky Dance Academy, who rented the grounds to film their dance recital, which is also kind of another example of a cross promotion. And here I have a few of our personal statistics from October of 2018 versus October of this year. It really gives us an idea of the success of our efforts. The main difference between these years is that in 2020, we began posting daily, implementing a strategy, and tracking the results to help with our future decisions on our tactics. And you can see the benefit of this from the chart. While our posting was minimal the past few years, we gained only 88 Facebook followers and 120 Instagram followers. But after increasing our activity, in this year alone, we've gained nearly 500 Facebook followers and 300 followers on Instagram. On top of that, our monthly organic reach has significantly increased on all of our platforms. And if you don't know what reach is, it's the total number of accounts that are seeing your content. Some other statistics that I keep track of are impressions, click rates, best performing posts, and paid reach. And then I also keep track of our hashtag sets to find out which ones are contributing to our reach or impressions. Lastly, I have kind of some examples of how I keep track of the hashtag sets. So I monitor them by comparing similar posts with similar hashtag sets. I have an example of 3 here, all centered around turtles. And the left largest picture and the top one gained the most reach from hashtags, while the bottom right gained very few. The bottom right was posted first, and when I posted that, I saw that it only reached 4 people from its hashtag set. So I knew whenever I was posting the one on the left to use maybe only 1 or 2 of those hashtags. And then when the one on the left did well with its hashtag set and received 77 accounts reached from those hashtags, I knew when posting the top right one, I should be using a lot of those hashtags. Unfortunately, Instagram doesn't really tell you how many people follow a certain hashtag. It only tells you how many images are tagged with that hashtag. So you have to do a lot of trial and error on your own posts to take an educated guess at which hashtags have the highest following. In this case, I'm guessing it was probably baby turtles, because that seems to be something that people love as baby animals. That is it. I hope you found some of this information interesting, or you learned something from it. Again, we're going to have a Q&A after, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask me, or you can email me if we don't have time. I included it at the bottom here. I'm going to turn it over to Julia and let her tell her ghost story, and I'm going to leave this image up of our gray lady ghost.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm a low-tech person. I apologize, and I will be reading my my ghost stories to you, so pardon any clunkiness. And some of this is a tiny bit repetitive, or just repeating some of the things that Sarah said about the site, but just to reiterate some of the details about the Brown family here, whose story I do love to tell. So before we get to Tales of the Afterlife, we should understand a bit about the Brown family while they lived. So I'll start with a brief overview. Liberty Hall was built by John Brown, one of Kentucky's first 2 senators. Construction began in 1796 and was completed by 1801, when John moved in with his bride, Margaretta Mason Brown, and their firstborn son named Mason. Soon after, Margaretta gave birth to their second son, Orlando. Both Mason and Orlando would survive into adulthood, but sadly 3 other children would not be so fortunate. There were 2 baby boys, both named Alfred, born and lost in the space of 2 years, the first deaths to darken the joys of their happy home. Then in 1807, to the delight of the family, a girl child was born. She was named Euphemia and was a light upon the hearts of all who knew her. But that light would be extinguished too soon on October 18, 1814, when she was just 7 years old. After a battle with bilious fever, she passed away, and her mother, Margaretta, was nearly undone by this loss. She sunk into the deepest depths of grief, and her writings at that time were filled with an outpouring of sorrow and despair. Inconsolable, she grew emaciated and withdrew from life, wandering the gardens of her home, searching for a sign from her angel child. Her brother would visit from New York and become alarmed by her condition, telling other family members that she appeared to have aged drastically. It was feared that her grief would send her to death's embrace and an early grave. One can imagine the worry this caused an already grieving family. 3 years would pass with Margaretta's emotional state little improved, to the exasperation of some close to her. Into this house of woe, a beloved visitor would arrive in hopes of bringing comfort and perhaps easing her grief. In 1817, Margaretta Varick, Margaretta Brown's maternal aunt, arrived from New York. The aunt had helped raise Margaretta after the death of her mother at an early age, and the two were very close. Mrs. Varick was at the advanced age of 72 and had endured the rigors of the lengthy trip during a particularly hot summer, reaching Liberty Hall in late July. She had yet to recover from the grueling journey and was with the family for a mere 2 days before she fell violently ill and then died on the third night in an upstairs bedroom of the home. The exact cause of her death is unknown, but a heart attack was suspected. Now, a lady such as herself would have utilized what was known as a traveling cloak to protect her few everyday garments from the filthy conditions encountered on the boats and carriages that conveyed her to Frankfurt. And so she reached the Browns' household in her gray traveling cloak, and she's been wearing it ever since. She had no means to foresee that this trek would deliver her to her final resting place and begin the long legend of the Gray Lady of Liberty Hall. Mrs. Varick was laid to rest in the family plot on the property alongside several who had gone before her. But after the establishment of the Frankfort Cemetery, all of the family's remains were moved there over a period of time in 1847, according to family letters. The grave markers that stand there today are inscribed with the names of many Brown family members, but Margaretta Varick's is not among them, and the cemetery has no record of her burial. We can speculate that dismay or confusion around the resting place of her remains could account for her wanderings, or perhaps it was the unfinished business of failing to reach her intended destination, which was to have been Illinois, where her own children resided. Her visit with Margaretta was to be a stop along the way. She may have felt guilty, dare I say, mortified even, that rather than bringing comfort to her beloved niece, she had instead brought more grief and trouble to the family. Though the truth may never be known to those on this side of the veil, her spirit has lingered in the area of the room where she departed this mortal realm, still trying to look after family and visitors to Liberty Hall. The first post-mortem sighting is said to have been made by a new family member, the young bride of John Brown's grandson, Gratz, in the late 1820s. She was staying in the bedroom where old Mrs. Varick had passed away, and reported being astonished at the sight of a gray figure who walked silently across the floor of the room before disappearing. Gratz's sister, another Margaretta, told of seeing the spirit as well in the hallway near the haunted bedroom. Perhaps the most well-known tale of the Gray Lady's visitations occurred in the 1880s, again in the room so briefly occupied by her in life. As a young teenager, John Brown's great-granddaughter, Mary Mason Scott, known as Mame, was staying in the home, having just returned from boarding school in New York. She settled into bed and fell asleep, but was awoken in the night by a rustling sound. She saw a tall apparition veiled in gray by the bed, leaning toward her. Surprised, she reached out to the figure, but her hand passed through it and it disappeared. She screamed in confusion, which brought frightened family members rushing to her chamber, bearing a fireplace poker and a shotgun, imagining a more corporeal intruder, perhaps. Mame's experience seemed to have been passed off by the family, but for her it would reoccur the following 2 nights, causing her to believe that the phantasm was more than a dream or imagining. It was unsettling enough that she asked to be moved to one of the other bedrooms. The rest of the family at the time did not seem to believe that what she had seen was a ghost, but that there was some unknown natural explanation. It would be some time later, when sharing her experience with the family friend, that she learned of the suspicions about old Mrs. Varick's spirit haunting the home. So Mame learned that she was not the first to see the ghost who would come to be known as the Gray Lady. She certainly wouldn't be the last. As it was, the event seemed to leave a lasting impression on Mame's young psyche, such that in spite of being a Christian, she developed a deep interest in what was known as spiritualism and utilized various methods of communing with the dead and even forms of divination. After she inherited Liberty Hall as an adult, several contemporaries recalled that she would give palm readings and was known to use a Ouija board, perhaps even holding seances within the walls of the storied mansion. However, if Mame did have further encounters with spirits, she did not record them for posterity. She did often recount her experience with old Aunt Varick and referred to her as our beloved ghost in her letters, regarding her as a benevolent presence. Mame would be the last family member to live in the home, joining the dearly departed in 1934. It was she who had the foresight to ensure that Liberty Hall would be preserved as a museum due to the historic importance of her family and the structure itself. She was a member of the Society of Colonial Dames, to whom the house was sold and who are the caretakers of the property to this day. Now, some believe that participating in such occult activities as Mame was known to do can open doors to the spiritual realms and create portals through which the dead may come and go. Perhaps this could explain the ongoing occasional encounters that so many claim to have had over the long years. Doubtless, many personal anecdotes went unrecorded and have been lost to the passage of time and memory, but there are many that have been written about and repeated. One of the best known of these occurred in 1911 to a Mrs. Rebecca Averill, a family friend of the Browns. She wrote a descriptive account of her experience after she had been a guest in the home, staying for a few days in the haunted bedroom. Though she was aware of the tales of a ghostly presence, she was undaunted when it was suggested that she sleep in that room. In her own words, here is how she tells the story. I read until 12 o'clock, and turning out the bed lamp, slept for almost 2 hours. Then, suddenly, hearing the swish-swish of silken garments, I sat straight up in bed and pinched my arm to see if I were really awake. I felt my heart to see if I had palpitation, for in the moonlight, halfway across the big room, there walked the Gray Lady, pausing now and again as if communing with other presences, who were not, however, visible to me. Just then, the town clock across the treetops, a square and a half away, rang out, boom, boom, and I was so startled that I slipped down under the bed covers, but soon peeped out only to find her gone. Next morning, she told her hostess that the figure had been wearing a gray silk bonnet and a long crepe shawl. The hostess told her that she herself had often seen the same figure and that if she called out, it would vanish through the closed bedroom door. Mrs. Averill was told of a family member who had seen the figure twice, once hovering over the bed, and when the girl reached out her hand, it passed straight through the dove-colored veil. She also told of a servant who had been sewing in the haunted room one afternoon and saw the figure manifest twice, floating around before it seemed to rise up the chimney. A daughter-in-law had seen the ghost in the room at midnight while visiting and ran screaming, refusing to set foot inside ever again. Mrs. Averill's godmother told her that she had also seen the spirit twice, once speaking to her in the hallway, whereupon she passed through the closed door of the ghostly bedroom. In spite of all these tales, Mrs. Averill declared she would spend the rest of her visit in the eerie chamber, hoping to encounter the ghost again, but said she never reappeared to her. Mrs. Averill said that she would not have dared speak to the spirit, as she recalled from her Sunday school lessons that if one spoke to spirits, they might hear things they would be better off not knowing. As stories began to circulate about the haunting, a Louisville Courier-Journal article was published about her in 1922, and it contains the first known reference to Mrs. Varick as the Gray Lady, perhaps due to the common descriptions of ghosts as wispy gray figures. As we know, that name would stick in the minds of the public, though the family would refer to her as our beloved ghost, a reminder that she had once been a caring family member and perhaps still is. On into the 1900s, sightings and strange occurrences would continue, sometimes a questionable glimpse in passing, sometimes a bit more alarming to those who were unprepared for the disembodied antics of the restless spirit. A well-documented account from the 1960s happened after there had been a fire at Liberty Hall near the base of the grand staircase. Two respectable men had been called upon to guard the house from vandalism as the electricity had been turned off due to the fire. They had lit candles to provide light, leaving them in the rooms and on the stairs as they patrolled the house. Deciding they should check the attic, they opened the door leading up to it, but only with difficulty as it was flush with the floor and required force to open. While in the attic, they heard the door slam shut. Alarmed, they quickly freed themselves, running downstairs to see if anyone had come into the house. Finding no evidence of trespassers, they went and closed the attic door, only to find it open again later on another round of checking security. Throughout the 3 days of their stay, this would happen several times and was inexplicable to the men. The third and final night brought a crescendo of activity to the brave men, who heard strange cries, moans, and groans, and would discover that each candle they lit would be snuffed out. They did not claim to believe in the ghost after their experience, but stated that there was definitely something weird going on in that house. The aftermath of the fire and the resultant repairs required could perhaps explain the agitation of the household spirit. It's understood that such disruptions to the environment they are used to can cause spirits to act out or manifest as they resist changes to the spaces they have occupied for so long. In fact, as the repair work was being completed, the curator at the time, a Mrs. Coleman, was taking photos for the insurance company to document the work. She took one at the base of the staircase where much of the damage had been, and when she collected the photos from the developer, there was an inexplicable figure on the stairway. She had seen no such thing when taking the photo and returned with it to the developer seeking an explanation. It was discovered that the figure appeared on the negative as well, and being the year 1965, no solution to the mystery could be found, but it was determined that there had been no tampering with the photo. This would become the famous ghost photo of the Gray Lady, but interpretations are as varied as the persons who look upon it. You can judge for yourself as you view the accompanying image. Throughout her nearly 20 years tenure there, the same curator who took the photo reported several mysterious incidents which she herself witnessed or were experienced by visitors to the site. There were the common tropes of haunting, such as rocking chairs rocking on their own, doors opening or closing without assistance, and the sounds of other people in the house when there was no one else there. But perhaps the strangest incident, which left behind tangible evidence, was when Mrs. Coleman found 2 gold bracelets left on the bedside table in the haunted room. She knew they weren't part of the Liberty Hall collection, and there had been no recent visitors due to inclement weather. Upon checking with other staff members and the dames, she could not determine to whom they belonged. She took them to a jeweler who told her they appeared to be early 19th century pieces. She brought the mysterious ornaments back to the site, where they remain unclaimed to this day. In the late 1970s, a young boy played by himself and wandered in the rooms of Liberty Hall, while his father, an architect, worked with some historic reconstructionists on the home. After a while, the father went in search of his son and could hear him chatting away in one of the upstairs bedrooms. The boy was alone, but stated that he had been talking with an old lady, though his father had heard no other voice. The incident stuck with the child, who grew up near Frankfort, and as an adult, he heard other stories of the Gray Lady. Just a few years ago, he stopped by the site out of curiosity and shared his experience with those of us on the staff. He recalled that he had been in the bedroom to the right at the top of the stairs and was surprised to learn it was the haunted bedroom and the very place where old Aunt Varick had taken her last breath. There was an incident in the 1980s as restoration work was being done in various parts of the house. The historic researcher, Estill Pennington, was working on the parlor when he was startled by the sudden onslaught of a terrible odor along with a movement that caught his eye. He saw that a quill pen was spinning rapidly in circles inside the ink jar where it sat. He then noticed an indistinct figure in the hallway, but upon searching could find no other person in the house, and the phenomenon subsided. The apartment wing behind the back of the house over the kitchen is visible from the window of the haunted room. After the Brown family was gone, it was used by various caretakers and tenants over the years, many of whom also reported ghostly activities in that area. In the 1980s, a volunteer curator named Eugenia Blackburn lived in the apartment. She reported that she would often come in to find that the place had been tidied in her absence. Once, she arrived at the back gate with her arms full of groceries, and the heavy gate swung open by itself. Another resident of the apartment reported that while she was taking a bath one evening, she wished aloud that she had closed the bathroom door, whereupon it slowly swung shut on its own. In 1991, Bob Norman, a caretaker who lived in the apartment, had a more dramatic experience. He was studying quietly and was startled when pages began to be torn from his wall calendar and flung to the floor. He had been told that one should speak to spirits, and assuming it was Mrs. Varick, he addressed her by name and asked that she stop, which she did, but not before removing the months of September through December from his calendar. He also told of candles being removed from a candle stand and flung to the floor. He thought perhaps for some reason the Gray Lady did not approve of his presence. A more recent tenant I spoke with told me of being awake in bed late one night, knowing she should get to sleep, but engrossed in some reading. Suddenly, clear as day, she said, she heard a woman's voice gently say her name and tell her to go to sleep. She said she wasn't afraid, and the voice sounded motherly. On another occasion, she had to rise before dawn. She had locked her bedroom door, as always, upon retiring as a safety precaution. When she got up in the dark to begin her early day, the bedroom door swung open on its own. Again, she felt no threat or fear. There have been several other fairly recent occurrences reported by staff members. A former director was working alone in Liberty Hall. Suddenly, she heard loud footsteps coming up the stairs and called out, thinking a coworker had come in. No one answered, and there was no one else in the house, but there was no mistaking the loud sounds she had heard. Other staff have reported hearing the distinctive sound of the back door opening and closing, only to find that no one is there, but we always keep the doors locked while we're inside. In 2014, one of the tour guides was giving a tour to a group that included a mother and her young son. The guide had made no mention of the Gray Lady yet, but the boy kept asking to go upstairs, so she took them up. They went into Mame's bedroom, and she began to talk about Mame, but the boy quickly pulled his mother back out into the hallway. The guide continued speaking with the other guests for a few moments and then went to check on the mother and son. The child seemed distressed, and his mother explained that he said he'd seen a ghost and was ready to leave. The guide tried to reassure them that there was nothing to be afraid of. His mother then confided that he sees ghosts often, but always gets a little shaken up. He had been told nothing of the resident Gray Lady. Another guide had a guest who shared the story of touring Liberty Hall many years before with her since deceased husband. As they both exited the parlor, their eyes were drawn to the top of the stairs. Then they looked at each other in surprise, asking, "Did you see her?" They both caught a glimpse of a shadowy gray figure on the landing, and they had never forgotten it. In 2014, our curator had been overseeing the installation of new curtain rods and heavy curtains. The curtain rod holders are heavy duty and securely attached to the walls, with the rods seated securely. They had been hanging for a few weeks when she arrived one day to find that they had all been lifted up out of the brackets and flung to the floor, with the brackets still attached to the walls. Due to the alarm system and limited availability of keys, we know that no one had been in the home. The curtains were hung on their rods, but the incident was repeated about 3 months later. It took great effort to hang the heavy drapes near the high ceilings and an unknown force to remove them, but after they were hung for the third time, they stayed put. Perhaps a former resident objected to their style, but finally gave up fussing with them, and they've hung unbothered since that time. As someone who has spent many an hour within that graceful house, I can report with some measure of dismay that I have yet to have my own experience with the Gray Lady of Liberty Hall. I'm not sure what I would do if it did happen, but I know I've felt nothing but peace here and wish for all the former residents to enjoy their eternal rest. So that's some of our ghost stories. I hope you'll come and visit and hear some of the other stories of the Browns and the Stepney family. We'd love to have you.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. I love that photo. I had goosebumps several times. All righty. If anybody has questions now, you can feel free to put them in the chat, or we can unmute you and you can ask them yourself. I do want to thank Sarah and Jerica and Julie for coming to visit us today, virtually as it may, and giving us that lovely presentation. I did have Ellen said that I didn't know you could do that with the Instagram and the hashtags. Jerica, could you give us just a little bit more detail on what you were talking about there?
Actually, it's somewhat of a new feature. They didn't always used to let you see where your reach was coming from. They would just tell you what the amount of reach was that you had. So like I said, they don't tell you on Instagram how many people are following a hashtag, so you kind of have to do some trial and error for it. But whenever you are looking at your feed, there'll be the button that says view insights, and now it includes how many accounts you've reached from your hashtags. And you basically just kind of have to figure out, based off of other posts that you've had, if those ones didn't get much of a reach from those hashtags, then you know, well, none of those hashtags really have a following, so you have to try new ones with your next set that you do.
Excellent. Do you experiment with the number of hashtags that you put down, or?
No, I actually have a system where I always do 11. You usually don't want to do too many because you don't want it to look spammy, and you don't want it to do too less of an amount because you want enough that it's going to get you something. So I always I think 11 is a good number to stick with for me personally.
Okay, excellent. Does anybody else have any questions out there? I wrote one down. You said that you monitor what's working and what's not working. Can you give us a couple of examples of ways that you tell that things are working and ways that you tell things are not working? Obviously, we just talked about the hashtags, but.
Yeah, so that's one of them. Another one is, so your reach is the total accounts that you're reaching, and then your impressions are the total amount of times that your content is being seen. So they might be, someone might see a post 2 times from you and it counts into your impressions. So that's usually a higher number than your reaches. So basically I just kind of go based off of which posts get the highest amount of reach or the highest amount of impressions, because that tells me that it's content that other people like.
Okay, excellent. I don't think we mentioned it, but did you or did Sarah, did we go through the actual hours that you guys are open and what a normal cost for a ticket, a tour is?
Okay, we do tours Monday through Saturday. We have one at 11:30 and one at 1:30. Because of COVID, you have to buy your tickets online prior to arrival. It's an easy system to use, and you can just go online and buy the tickets. I think I should know this, but I think it's $9. Is that right, girls? Okay. Should know that. Anyway, we have decided to extend our season, and we will be open to the end of December. There will be a couple of days, obviously, around Thanksgiving and Christmas that we're closed. But when you go on Fair Harbor on the website to buy tickets, you'll see what days are available for tours. We do ask that everyone wear a mask, and we do social distancing, and we have plenty of sanitizer throughout the house. So yeah, we'd love to have you guys come visit.
Excellent. You mentioned the season. What is a season to you? Do you guys close down for a few months normally, and just stop giving tours?
Yeah, normally we're open from the middle of March till the middle of November, but well, one, because we couldn't reopen, we were closed this year until mid-July, so we wanted to extend the season. One thing that I forgot to say, that in December we will be doing our Christmas history tour. And it's a fun tour that we do where we put things in the rooms that we recognize as Christmas decorations or Christmas traditions. And then the guides will lead a discussion about whether or not John and Margaretta might have done that. So it's a little bit of a history of Christmas in Kentucky, as well as the regular tour.
Excellent, excellent. I'm not getting any questions online. Charlie, did you have anything?
One thing I will say, I'm glad all three of you could be here today and join us from, I'm assuming, are you in the same house? You joining us from different rooms, the same house?
No, I'm at home. Jerica and Julia are at the Brown house.
I don't think we could have done this at a lunch and learn the way we used to do it. We used to get together over at the library at noon. If you couldn't be there at noon, then we might have to pick somebody else to be here. But this has really opened up some flexibility, and I think this is a prime example of how we've used COVID to our advantage, if you will. And so I really appreciate. I always did love ghost stories, and so at some point, it has to become a real story and a believable story, and then maybe pass over the threshold into a ghost story. Did the story you told, was it a true story to our ancestors? What's your thought on that? Oh, she is muted. David, can you help?
Yep, I'm getting, I'll ask to unmute.
Jerica's.
There we
There we go.
There we go.
So these stories are all stories that the Brown family members wrote down. We have a huge file where, you know, some of the dames have told stories. And these are people who you don't have any vested interest in making things up. And I think they felt that it was important to the history of the house to include these stories. There are, in our file, there are some little newspaper articles that was, and of course we have all the family letters. So these stories are certainly true to the family members and the people that experienced them. And they're fun to tell.
Well, they're fun to listen to as well.
Yeah.
I have at least one more follow-up question for Jerica or Sarah. What are you guys doing now because of COVID that you didn't necessarily do before, that, let's cross our fingers and hope that at some point COVID does end, that you think you're going to continue? So, I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about, you know, the bad and the way we've been disrupted, but is there something that is turned out to be good for you that you're going to continue to do that you didn't do before?
Well, I think that doing our virtual programming, we've done 3 tours. Jerica filmed, there's one of the kitchen that Julia did, one of the family parlor, and then one of the attic that the curator did. I think that it helps us reach people. As Charlie was saying, you know, people can't always get together when you want them to, but having virtual programming available on our website, people can go to that and do the tour. Or we're talking about doing lectures via Zoom so that we can reach a wider audience. Because if you don't have to travel to Frankfurt, that really makes a difference and widens our audience. We've done 3 garden programs. One, I think we are going to continue, where we worked with Broadway Clay, where the guests would go to Broadway Clay, make a pot, then come to Liberty Hall, do a garden tour, and then get a plant from our garden to put in their pot. And I think that worked really well. We had a small group because of COVID, but it actually works really well for the interaction between the public and the person during the tour. Jerica, Julia, anything you all want to add to that?
I agree with you, and I also think it's given the opportunity to be able to put a lot of focus into Facebook and Instagram, and I think it really has helped start getting our name out since I'm able to put so much focus into it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I feel like the online pre-sign up is helping us.
Yeah.
I hope we can continue that. I know we haven't crunched all the numbers yet, but it's one of those things where, you know, if people have signed up in advance, they've paid in advance, they're more likely to come, and it just helps people with planning and helps our staff with planning as well. So hopefully we can keep that going forward too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. From a business point of view, the online ticketing is wonderful. Plus, we capture their email and we can put them on our email list and send them notices about future programs. Plus, we send them a post-visit survey, and we get feedback on what we're doing right and what they would like to learn more about. So it helps our programming and our tours as well.
Well, that is excellent. We are almost out of time, and I know Charlie had a couple of things, so I want to say once again, thank you guys so much for doing this for us. You mentioned like the virtual tours and the stuff that is on your website. I'm going to put your PowerPoint and a recording of this on our website. If you wanted to send me over just a little email of bullet points of what they can find on your website, I'm going to have a link to your website from ours. So I can kind of, you know, give them a little bullet points of what they can find there, and then hopefully they'll click it and go over and see that stuff. I know I'm interested in the virtual tours. That sounds great. Other than that, I just thank you so much and appreciate everything. Charlie, did you have any last words?
I do, but just to say thank you to the ladies today. It was an interesting, informative program. I sure appreciate you taking the time to be with us at KAGC.
Thank you for having us.
So beyond that, you're welcome to stay, but otherwise I wanted to talk a little bit about club business. If you are members, feel free, hang around. But what I would like to say is a big thank you to David Davis. Once upon a time, I was David Davis myself. This was going back a few years, but KAGC, day to day, at least month to month, is what it is because of our monthly programs, just like this one. And this is historic, just like it is for the rest of the world, to be doing everything on Zoom. But when we were in person, you get to bring interesting speakers in, and you get to shake hands with people. And you get to know their names because you're always on the phone with them. You're emailing. You're saying, what kind of AV needs do you have that I can set up? Do you need speakers? You need a video screen? What do you need? I don't get to do that much because David doesn't. But back in the day, I did that. And I know what it's like to be the most popular person in the club. Today, I'm not David Davis. He is the vice president of programs. But next year, he says he wants to stay as vice president of programs, and that's a great thing. But this club runs on its members. And for any members who are still with us today, looks like we're down to 13. If there's somebody you know, or if it's you yourself who would like to jump in and say, COVID's a weird time, but even still, I think we can do things with our organization to help those in the know, the communicators, whether that's in media, TV, radio, or you write speeches or press releases, websites, whatever it may be. If you're in communications with government, if that's state government, city, county, we don't care as long as it's government related. I would like for you to nominate somebody who you think might do a good job. They may not think it themselves. Last year, I see Lisa Tolliver on screen, nominated me. And I appreciated it. I had to give it some thought because I hadn't thought about stepping up myself. And if there's any one of you who knows somebody, I think you would be good at being on the board and helping with things like the spring conference, the fall conference, our awards, that we didn't get to have any of this year. But hopefully next year, COVID will lighten up. We don't know. We're just keeping our fingers crossed. One thing I will say about COVID, as I said earlier, I'm glad it has helped me, and with the small agenda that I brought to this organization is that I wanted to reach out to more people, to be available more times of the day, different places that they could join us from home, like you did, Sarah, or wherever you may be, that you don't have to get in a car and drive to a particular place in Frankfurt. We can all meet, and I like that. The things that I don't like is that it's canceled pretty much everything else. Hopefully we can overcome that next year. And if there's anybody who thinks, well, I have an idea for that, or I know somebody I've talked to about that you'll just send me their name, send them a name. Hey, I'm nominating you. What do you think? I have called some, and I think I've called 4, and 2 people have said yes, more than happy to, and 2, I guess, are still thinking about it. One thing we did do that was kind of cool this year is if you paid for membership this year, it also covers next year, because we're doing just so darn little. And so that's basically what I wanted to say, is that this organization runs on its members, and we sort of look to you to pick up the ball, and we can all be as popular as David Davis is. So
I
David,
don't know about that.
David, thanks. No, I say that you basically are a thread that keeps us going in light of everything else that isn't going. So thanks.
It's my pleasure, Charlie. With that, shall we call it a day? As I've mentioned, the next Lunch and Learn will be November 17th, 10:30 in the morning. More information will follow. Otherwise, everyone have a lovely day, and look for a follow-up email with links to the recording and the PowerPoint and any other information that Liberty Hall shares with us.
All right. We'll see you later.
All right. Thank you, everyone.